The Bible is considered one of the most important religious and historical documents, consisting of a series of stories told throughout time. Stories that have been distorted from its original meanings over centuries. The Bible has often been used for political gain or interpreted by religious leaders to influence. To influence what, you wonder? Influence behaviors, to influence decisions, and even influence the human mind. But here at Shifting Religious Concepts, our message is simple. Seek the deeper meanings that the stories of the Bible were always meant to tell. Read, interpret, and understand the Bible and its contents as the great storytellers of the past intended it. Now is the time to capture the depth of not only who, but what God truly is. Now is the time to shift from the ideas of identifying yourselves as sheep, but as powerful, living, thriving gods yourself. Shift into the power of not discovering, but uncovering what God created you to be. Right here with SRC, as we began to unpack the secret knowledge that was intended to be shared with everyone.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, SRC family. I am Manala D, your host, and as always, we are here to unpack knowledge and wisdom, and we use the Bible to do it. We have with us today our contributors, Mark Thomas, Pastor Archie Sanders, Dr. Kedar Griffo, Tilmisha Burgess, and Brother Lavelle Rosser back with us today. And I know they are ready to share some deep knowledge with you. Now, we've been discussing the book of Numbers, and we will continue that conversation today as there is so much to share with you. We welcome our guest, and if any of our guests want to say something, ask a question, please raise your hand, unmute yourself, and I will call on you, and you can make a brief statement regarding the topic or ask the question regarding the topic. This is the fourth episode in this series, and this series is the Book of Numbers. And what does it all mean? And I suggest, as I always do, you need to do this right now. You need to call your family, your friends, send them that link that you use to jump on to this broadcast, and tell them they need to jump on immediately, because this is going to be so good, and I just can't wait to dig down in it. So now let's get to work. But before we get started, we're going to have Mark Thomas, who is going to brief us on what we learned during the last episode.
All right. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, we can hear you.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, and all I mentioned, this is the fourth episode. Well, there's another significant number today, and that is this is our 40th total episode today. So I'm sure everybody, yeah, congratulations to all. Tanisha's clapping. It's actually a big deal. The number 40 comes up often in the Bible. Maybe it'll come up today in our presentation. But yeah, congratulations to everyone involved with the SRC experience. And let's see where we go from here. One other thing, you might call it a piece of business for SRC, is a happy birthday to Anala. You haven't had a chance to sing her happy birthday yet. Maybe, maybe at the end of the show.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about our last broadcast, which was on August 8th. I just reviewed that video just a few days ago, and I thought it was really one of the most informative we put on. Anala began the show by emphasizing how important names and their corresponding numbers were to the ancient storytellers, and how this is still important to our present day lives. And Archie and Tamisha both spoke about the feminine and male aspect of each of us, and how the religious leaders of that time addressed this, or as Archie said, set us up for how we struggle with this issue even today. So this is one of the things we try to do in the SRC presentations, is we want to highlight how the Bible, this book that was put together centuries ago, has amazing truths and lessons that are still relevant to our lives today. But we also want to reveal how these things in the Bible can be used to manipulate or herd people like sheep, or at least that's the effect they'll have if interpreted like many church leaders encourage even today. So Anala then went on to ask Lavelle Rouser about the importance of names. Fascinating to listen to Brother Lavelle explain how important it is to be named so as to resonate with who you are. He talked about naming ceremonies in different cultures and religions. And Dr. Griffo also told us about how people of ancient times and even today often had many names through their lifetimes according to their situations. And then at the end of the broadcast, Dr. Griffo emphasized again how important it is to understand that much of what we read in the book of Numbers is very similar to what we learned in the Revelation series, that these stories are symbolic of who we are physically and spiritually and how we can live fuller lives through understanding this ancient wisdom. Okay, that was just a real brief summary of our last show, but it brings us up to where we are today in the book of Numbers. Please remember that if you missed our last broadcast, that you can always view it on the Shifting Religious Concepts channel. Just write that Shifting Religious Concepts into YouTube and it'll take you there. I watch every show at least once on YouTube and always get something new out of it. So Anala, please.
Thank you so much for that summary, Mark Thomas. Now, we know that the Bible, we understand that the Bible provides a series of stories personified as individuals. But these stories, they provide insight of who we were created to become. And these stories point to the living God or goddess that reside within every being that's covered in these human flesh suits. The Bible is filled with amazing stories, but unfortunately, through these stories, organized religion taught us to look outside of ourselves to those personified in the story. And when we personify people on the outside of ourselves, we often don't get the gist of what we were being taught. So SRC exists to shine a light in the stories and shine a light on the stories and on the knowledge that was intended for everyone to receive. For example, look at chapter 12 in the book of Numbers and verse 1 through 5. And let's read that right now. It says, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, ha, the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses. Hath he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And the Lord spoke suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, come out ye three unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And they three came out. And the Lord came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. So now what does this all mean? When you dig deeper, you discover that Miriam means rebellion and Aaron means lofty or having an overbearing manner. And then of course, the name Moses characterizes meekness. In another episode, we discussed that the Bible continues to shed a light on our conscious and subconscious mind. And the body, which is the tabernacle, houses that mind. The book of Revelation that we just finished studying not too long ago unpacked information about the 7 levels of consciousness or chakras. So now when you think about that, with all this information in mind, let us review the verse read in the light of what we learned in Revelation. In verse 1, we have the root or the lower mind rebelling at the higher mind. In fact, the lower mind, we saw that in the scripture, can even hear what's going on in the higher consciousness. It can hear what's been spoken by that higher mind. But because that lower mind concerns itself with survival, security, and stability, it does not heed the call of the higher mind. And when you think about it, that is one of the reasons Moses couldn't move into that higher consciousness. And Dr. Griffo talked about that before. He couldn't move into the higher consciousness because that in that story, that mindset vibrated in a lower vibration and could not go there. And you will recall also that Dr. Griffo said that the lower vibrational thoughts cannot occupy the space within the higher consciousness or within the crown, which is, this is a crown, cannot occupy that space. And you see, and when you go back again at verse 5, think about what it says here, saying the Lord came down in the pillar. Now the pillar is that bridge that separates that higher consciousness, or that from heaven and the earth, the lower vibration, it separates it. So it says the Lord stood at the door. Where's the door? So I'm thinking the door is the heart. You know, the Lord didn't go all the way down to the lower vibration. He came right at the door. And what did the Lord do when he came at the door? He came down in a cloud, or came down, and what is the cloud? The cloud is the state of gloom or the trouble that was lurking there, trying to move up to the higher consciousness. So the Lord came right to the door, to the door of the bridge there, and and made it clear that all power resides right here. And guess what? That ended that insurrection, didn't it? It didn't get any further than right there. And that's what we have got to learn to do. So with that, I want Pastor Archie to jump right in right now and tell us what's going on here. I know that, Pastor Archie has been a pastor for over 30 years. He's now part of the SRC team. But what did religion teach us about this? And then shift it over to what is the truth? What should we know about this scripture, about any of the scriptures that we're going to unpack today?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Anala. I tell you, as I said before, this book of the Bible is a stage, like a play being set up, because in the beginning it talks about separating everyone based on their families, where to come from, and so forth and so on. But I'm finding out that the problem that most of us think is the problem is the color of who his wife was, but that really wasn't the problem. The problem was really religion, and religion has separated people for a long time. And even though I've even preached it myself that it was because of her color, she was a black woman, but come to find out they were all black because they were African. Just as well, all of them was there from Egypt. They originated from Egypt, but what this stage has done has set us against each other culturally, because of who we are, our color, the things that we do. But as you're saying, it's really speaking of our body, how we are to control our lower essence so that we can move on up to a higher consciousness. But it was put that way, as I said a while ago. Apollonius was very smart when he put the things in the Bible so that those who was of the esoteric will understand it, but those of the exoteric would take it literally and go about following it letter for letter and word for word, and it messed us up. Because we didn't really understand, if you think about it, a real true God, the true God that we serve, now does not look at this the way that man has written it. The ancient priests put it that way so that they could control the masses. It was written that way, so that they could look at it like this here and see that man run around for 40 years in the wilderness and all these other things that came about here. It told a story. Yes, it do tell a story, and you can gain a lot of knowledge from understanding how it is showing us that we shouldn't rebel against God. And but who is God? The question is, who is the God that they were talking about when they said we have to follow everything that God done, that he said to do, according to what Moses told us. See the stage that is setting? Certain individuals can only be holy. It set that stage right from the beginning, that it really set up what we call now, I imagine the system that we're under. It set that system. It put it in place, and it has lasted for years. You can go back, look at some of the popes and see what they said about Christianity and how it went further than what they thought it was going to go, and how great it has been. Holding people captive and keeping them. But it's very important to understand that numbers, it was a consensus, but look what the things that it painted for us. It painted a picture for us to grab hold to, and we're still holding to what that book has told us, and who was good and who was holy and who wasn't holy, what family was could follow God or could talk to God, and who could talk to God, and so forth and so on. But as we go on, we come to realize ourselves now at SRC that we are children of the Most High God.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right, Archie. Thank you so much for that. We are not only children of the house, the Most High God, but God lives in us. God is within us. I mean, and the only thing that people see is this flesh suit, but God is the living force that lives within each and every one of us. Thank you so much for that. But now let's step back for a second. Let's look at this Ethiopia woman, because we realize that this Ethiopia was, it was more of a dark place or something. Give us a little bit more insight, would you, Dr. Griffo, on this Ethiopian woman? Who was that? Because we know that these are all stories, and they personify these stories. So what are they talking about here?
Remember in Genesis, it says that the gold in that land was good. And he was talking about Cush. Cush is Ethiopia. So just as you were saying, or as Pastor Archie was saying, a lot of people thought it was about the race, but it was not about the race. It was because she was Ethiopian, which allegedly was a different culture than the so-called Jews. But since the gold in that land was good, as you know, we're talking about the head, and we're talking about inside of our brains, is coated with a thin layer of gold. There's gold particles within our brains. So you're talking about the higher essence. So he was marrying the lady from Cush, which is where the gold is. So he was just only marrying up to the same type of thoughts that would get him to the higher level, not dealing with Miriam, as you said, which was the lower level. Even as you said, with God coming down, the word earth, if you take the H off of earth from the end and put it at the front, it becomes heart. So I agree with you that you were coming down to a certain level, where God would come down to a certain level to meet with the people and then rise back up, because all of those names that Aaron meant dweller in a high place. Of course, now this is the higher place, because he was Moses's mouthpiece, and that deals with the throat chakra. So you're leaving the heart chakra, which is the middle part, and then the other three chakras are the higher aspect of man. And then the ones below the heart are the lower aspects of man. So the heart chakra, the green chakra, is the middle chakra, is the middle point. It is the bridge to whether or not you're going to either go higher or whether or not you're going to go lower. So when he married the Ethiopian, whose name was Zipporah in some texts, it was just about him acknowledging and dealing with his higher knowledge as opposed to dealing with the lower knowledge of marrying a Hebrew woman. So that's what it was. And Miriam was turned white, a leopard is white, which if you read the Bible, it's symbolism. Every time God got mad at folk, he would turn them white. With the Gehazi Nahum story, when Ham saw Moses's naked body, in Leviticus it talks about that God put the curse of leprosy in the house of Canaan, which was the son of Ham. And if you look at the effects of leprosy, it turned people white, turned their hair blonde. So it was a play on what happens within the body, of course, from a metaphysical aspect, and nothing more, nothing less. So you are absolutely on point with that. I can't add anything to it until I hear other people speak, and maybe they might spark me with other things. But I'm so enamored with that tree of life behind you that it's blowing my mind that inside of our brains they have what they call near the medulla oblongata is called the arbor vitae. Arbor meaning tree and vitae meaning life, so tree of life. And what you have behind you is the tree of life. So again, that whole story that we find in Genesis about God telling Adam and Eve not to eat of this tree and not to eat of that tree, it's all symbolically what happens about certain aspects of what's in our brains. And again, the tree of life, absolutely one of them. So that story about the gold being in that land and him marrying the Ethiopian is dealing with the higher knowledge, the higher. You remember that being that we spoke about in Daniel's dream, or in Nebuchadnezzar's dream that Daniel interpreted, and it had the man with the head of gold and then the silver and etc. So gold always deals with the higher knowledge. And remember, they said that Ethiopia was the land that was full of gold, had the good gold.
Yes. Okay, what we will need to do right now, we want to come back and we want to talk some more about this as we move down and talk about how they went out and inspired out the land and all the giants. We want to get into some of that. What did all that mean? And everything. We want to share that. But before we do that, we're going to take a brief pause for the calls and go to this commercial for just a second. So you guys just give me a second. Let me get this all set up. Thank you. So we took a longer break this time because we kind of went over our time with our talking, but that's okay. But we're back now, and we want to talk some more about the chapter 12. And so, Dr. Griffo, you were talking about the chapter 12 and how the gold that we have gold in our brains. Could you kind of delve into that a little bit more? Let us know. So are you saying that we actually have gold, or is the essence of gold?
No, actual gold is found within your body. The same way we have iron in our bodies, we have zinc in our bodies, we have certain minerals and things like that help our body to function, along with the cerebral cortex. And you know what I mean? It conducts electricity because we are electrical beings. That's why, when they take you to the hospital, they put monitors on you so they could check your electrical pulses. know what I mean? The EKG, the EEG, etc., because we are electrical beings. And so we have all of these different trace elements of minerals inside of our bodies that help conduct electricity, and we need all of these to make our bodies run effectively. So we have trace amounts of gold, we have trace amounts of iron, trace amounts of zinc. There's even other elements that, you know what I mean, when you look at it, you will find that, you know, we have trace amounts of all of these different things. So yes, it is literal gold that you can find within the brains of humans. The trace amounts, but, you know, not, you know, a nugget or anything.
That's what, you know, I was just sitting there thinking, you know, I hope people don't start going around trying to get into people's brains to take out the gold nugget. So I'm glad you just said that is not that way. So now let's look at verse 9 for a second. And Pastor Archie, Dr. Griffo, Lavelle, either one of you guys, Mark Thomas, Tamisha, either one of you guys can jump in and answer this question. But it says, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. Now, what is that telling us? Because, you know, I know in religion, they always told us that when we repent of sin, now God is no longer angry with us. But what is this really saying? Is after he brought those three people out, he said in verse 8, he said, with him will I speak mouth to mouth. He's talking about in the story, Moses, even apparently, and not in dark speeches, and to the similitude of the Lord shall be whole. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Now we know that Moses is down there in the lower vibrations along with them, yet in the story, he's still calling Moses his servant. And then after they came out, and I guess they said they were sorry or whatever, it says that the anger of the Lord was kindled against them. So break that down for us, someone.
God's or your higher nature will definitely chastise you, knowing that you are doing things that are anti progress for your body. We know this. We know that this is called a conscience, where we're like, man, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So that higher nature is saying, you know, you shouldn't be smoking. You know, you shouldn't be driving that car this fast. You know, you shouldn't be eating these foods. But our Lord nature will still challenge us. And then our higher nature will get upset with us for falling and to that temptation. So you beat yourself up, you know what I mean, from, you know, knowing that what you should have done that you didn't do. So that's pretty much all my understanding that is talking about when the anger of the Lord is kindled against those individuals. So as those thoughts continue to come up, and we're supposed to be angry enough to keep them from crossing that threshold. If you remember, Moses got almost to the promised land, but he couldn't cross over into the promised land.
That's right.
Right. So then you can get up to this point, but still not be able to kick that door in and go on into the promised land where it flows with what? Milk and honey.
Got you. And Pastor Arch, I see that you unmuted. What do you have to add to that?
I was trying to see what Moses what his I guess his number came out to be as far as his life, and I'm finding that it was 8. I sort of had a question myself, because each one of these individuals that were in leadership, they had certain characteristics, and I wanted to see what the number 8 was, being that Moses was the leader. I imagine it takes a certain type of person, because as I was reading yesterday, people were chosen by the family that they were in. And not only that, when God told Moses to choose the people for leadership, so to help him out, to keep him from being so overwhelmed, they had to be at least 36 years old. So I don't know if you guys were aware of that. They had to be at least 36 years old to fall into leadership. So what does this 8, number 8 for Moses mean? brought that up. So
that's a Lavelle question.
Yeah,
that's a Lavelle
so
question.
What does that place him, being that Moses comes out to be? I don't know if this is life number or essence or what it may be, but what does that place him as far as leadership is concerned?
Okay, Brother Lavelle, would you unmute yourself and respond to that?
Okay, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The number 8 represents a great power that we can possess. And the number 8 also is a vibration which deals with our lower self as well as our higher self. You'll find those people who dwell far too much in the lower self, they will fall into the traps of the lower world and the lower mind. That means corruption of ideas, corruption of thoughts, corruptions of intent, corruption with everything that you set out to do. The number 8 also represents a need for a great balance to be restored in our life. Once that happens, then we can move upward into the higher self, to the higher mind, to the higher thoughts, to the higher way of life. Okay? You find people who possess the power of the number 8, they are capable of balancing both the lower worlds and the higher worlds. And that's a lot of power that's possessed there. It's also said that those people, those guides, those leaders who possess the power of the number 8 are capable, they have the propensity to dominate a situation. And so even they themselves, when they know this, they have to be very careful, and become very fruitful in regards into learning how to use power, how to use money, how to use resources. Many of your people who are leaders, who are in positions of authority and in control, have and possess the power of the number 8. And so the number 8 also, according to the numbers, indicates that when you use this power, you must insert wisdom in using this power.
All right, thank you so much for that, Brother Lavelle. And you think about this, that Moses, being the number 8, had the power, and Brother Lavelle just indicated that you can use this power. Didn't say that you would, because you have to move into that power, recognize it, and then use it. But remember, Moses was given a name of meekness. And even though he was, as you say, a number 8, he never walked in that full power. And I think Brother Lavelle said that some time ago. He said that, we can have an 8, or we can be a 1, we could be a 33. But until we learn to walk into that power that we were given, that we won't ever possess it. And so even though Moses wasn't that number 8, he really never walked into that name that was given him. I don't know if the name held him back, the meekness of his, because his name, was characterized as meekness. So I don't know if that held him back so that he couldn't walk forth, and it caused him to stay in that lower level. Maybe he should have changed his name or something. I'm not sure in that story. But anyway, we can see that even in the story, how the goddess of God can go to that door. And I think Dr. Griffo said, the door is that heart, is that halfway place. And searches your heart to see what the truth is there. So I guess when he searched the heart of Moses in the story, he saw that Moses' heart was there. He wasn't a bad person. He just didn't have it, just didn't get that lesson, just wasn't able to go beyond that root chakra to make it to that higher point, is what I'm thinking.
So there's a picture, right? There's a picture, right quick. There's a picture that's painted for us there. If we look at Moses as a number 8, which I'm sure, until I began to, work with SRC and everything, I didn't look at the numbers and stuff like that. But that name is important. It paints a picture for us to show us that if we are in that position as being a number 8, we're supposed to be authoritative. And as you said, you know, he was afraid that he couldn't speak to the people, but it shows us that we should step right into that line of that path that we're supposed to be following, even though, as you say, we could be an 8, but we don't understand that what that means. It paints a picture for us to step in there, take control over the situation, and regardless of all these different minds coming in, it shows us that if we would take authority, things would fall into place, because you see that if we look at it as God coming in and saying, okay, look, take 70 people and the best people, the people that are already in leadership, and put them in place so they can help you. So what picture is showing us that if we take authority, as you tell me sometime, Manala, that within us already there's a way to do what it is that we are trying to do, but we must begin to take the authority and step up, and then we got to sort of be influential, and there are a few things that can guide us to get to the place where we're trying to get to, or we're supposed to be going to, if we just step in there.
Absolutely. Let's Tamisha Burgess, let's go to you for a second, Miss Tamisha.
Yes, Pastor Archie, everything I just was adding to my notes as you were talking, but mentioning the meekness, when we talk about, Mr. Lavelle, you mentioned the balance with the number 8, how there are some people embody that number and they're able to balance between their lower nature and their higher nature, essentially the dark and the light. Essentially, I'm going to go back to the whole heaven and hell, because even God came and descended down to call those lower natures up. And that's for a reason, right? So the meekness even is an imbalance. Being too meek, too humble, too overly humble is an imbalance. And so Pastor Archie mentioned taking the authority. This is the imbalance that it appears Moses had. The meekness had its place. That's why God was able to come down and call it up to it, because it was necessary. But then also the authority needed its place. So as I see this, it's this lower nature meeting the higher nature, these raw parts of ourselves meeting these refined higher parts of ourselves, both integrating with each other. I've done some research on this concept of ascending and descending, how God descends, come down, and then rises again, how we talked about the Christ consciousness before, coming down and rising again. And this is an ever evolving process of descending and ascending that never ends. God, the way we've been taught to think about God is just this almighty presence, always on high, just sitting in this place. But the true essence of God falls and rises again, falls and rises again. Why? Because there's this constant need to integrate both our lower nature and our higher natures. So the imbalance was that, there was too much meekness. He needed to take authority. And that's why God came down and call those powers to the forefront.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Tamisha. That was right on time. As we move into chapter 13, unless anyone else has anything they want to shout out about verse 12, but I am very interested in verse 17 of the book of Numbers, chapter 13, because it says, "And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain." And now in verse 18, it says, "And see the land, what it is, and the people that dwelleth therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many." Now, we know that in organized religion, we were taught that they went over and spied out the land, some real land somewhere, and then they didn't want to go over there because they seen all the giants and all that stuff. But we know now in SRC, we want to shift that concept of what that really was. Spying out the land. Dr. Griffo, why don't you start us off on that path and tell us what that really symbolized?
I'm sorry. Just the higher thoughts going to the positive thoughts going into the promised land. That's all. They sent the two spies to go in, representative of the Pingala and the Ida, which are connected to the pituitary and the pineal gland, which are found in here. And these were the two witnesses or the two spies that, again, going into Canaan. Canaan was the land of milk and honey, and the pineal gland secretes golden fluid, and the pituitary secretes a milky-like fluid. So that's all it's talking about, is those higher thoughts going into the land and surveying it and seeing that, yeah, these are where the giants are. This is where the good people are. This is where the fertile land is, because you have the fertile thoughts. You know what I mean? You got to go in and go to the right side where you're going to get all of those thoughts. If you go to the left side, then you're going to get the negative thoughts. But if you go to the right side, you're going to get the fertile land, the land of God, the milk and the honey, et cetera, et cetera. So just to play on what we've always talked about, those thoughts that are going into it, being that Moses couldn't go into the land, he had to send the spies in, and those spies were nothing but, as the energy transcends down and comes back up via the Kundalini, and it goes back into the right side of the brain. That's all it was.
So that's going right back to the point that Tamisha Burgess was making, and that is that, meekness was okay, but that because of the meekness, he couldn't even go check things out for himself, and there's a certain level of what she said is of meekness that's needed. But because of the meekness, I can't even go and get into meditation to see what the good is for me. I can't even do that. I need someone else, or I need something else to propel me, to get me there, to tell me that it's okay to go there. I can't even do it for myself. Is that pretty much what was happening here? Because we talk about land, and we talk about, you're talking that it wasn't going down to the lower chakra, or the root chakra, to see what was there. It was actually saying, let's go spy out and see what's really up there. So Moses being in this meek place, the story, and not being even able to go and spy out or think about, move your thoughts to something higher. That's pretty much what it was, is not being able to take your thoughts to a higher place.
All right, when you talk to most Hebrews, they would say that Moses' name means to be drawn out, out of water, right? Drawn out of water and placed on the land, but not being able to go to the higher consciousness. You remember, we've talked about the 4 or 5 stages of consciousness, first starting with earth, then water, then air, and fire. So Moses being drawn out of water was the second stage, but he couldn't get to the air stage or the on high stage. You follow? So then he could never get into the higher consciousness, because of, based off of the way they say that is what his name means, to only go to a certain level. That's why Adam could only go to a certain level. Noah could only go to a certain level. Moses can only go to a certain level. It was only when Jesus came, and he was caught up in the air, and he said that the person that's going to come after me is going to baptize you with fire, which is the highest stage, which is the last stage. So then all you're talking about is going through different stages of consciousness. Moses could not get to that higher level. And if you look up the name Amorite, Amor is one of the gods, or one of the tribes of Canaan, which is where they were supposed to go. His name means mountaineer, or as we've been learning about, peaks, because God dwells on mountains. We've talked about this before, and this is the mountain. This is the mound. So then he couldn't go to the 3rd and 4th stages of consciousness, because his name needs to be drawn out of water. So he was only dealing with a certain stage of consciousness.
Wow. So, that just goes right back to what, when Brother Lavelle was talking about, and you also, Dr. Griffith, were talking about, changing your name, and maybe having, your names mean wherever you're going at that moment, and what you're inspiring to do at that moment. No one said that we had to keep the same name for the rest of our life, and certainly not the name that was given to us from childbirth, because if it doesn't mean where you're going, now look at Moses' name. I certainly think that his name, that vibration in his name, according to what Brother Lavelle would say, kind of held him in that spot because he was a number 8 and he was supposed to be able to rise to higher places, but was never able to. Tamisha Burgess, I see that you have your mute off. What do you have to add on that?
Yeah, rising to a higher place so that he can, just be balanced between his higher and his lower. But when Dr. Griffo mentioned that the one that's coming after is fire, something like that. I remember my mom, she used to sing this song when we were kids, something about, that it's gonna rain, you better get ready, because something, God's gonna, God's gonna show you a rainbow sign. Won't be water but fire this time, right?
Yes, I remember that song.
This fire, I don't know, that song, we used to sing it all the time. And so that's what I'm hearing. And when I think about fire, I think about, the alchemical process. I think about, like, even right now, I think we're in that age of the fire. And so you see so many people using the term, even myself, the phoenix is rising, through the fire from the ashes. And so people are using this language, and I'm not quite sure they know that it's in alignment with with this fire that's here now. And then also we were taught that the world would end by fire, right? So some insight on that, Dr. Griffith, if you can.
No, you hit a home run. You hit a home run with it, absolutely. Because again, as you go through these different stages, the phoenix comes out of the fire because it's purged itself of its lower nature. It's purged all of its negative thoughts. You know what I mean? Because that's what it is. That's what it's about. It's an alchemical process going from what we called, what they call negredo, which is black, and then the fire hits it, the rubedo, and then out of it is the ashes, which is the albedo. So the red, the black, and the white. This is why you have those names in the Bible, Laban, which is milky white, Kedar, which means black, Adam, which means red. So, and then of course, if you recall back those 4 horses of the apocalypse, they have the same color scheme. If you read the Songs of Solomon and deal with Solomon, he's described as having rosy cheeks, ivory skin, and raven colored hair. So this color scheme, the red, the white, the black, is all dealing with the alchemical process. So you're absolutely right. This is why that phoenix is a red bird coming up out of the ashes, because it has purged itself and going on a greater height. Absolutely, you are on point.
All right. What we're going to do right now, we're going to go to commercial. But when we come back, each one of our contributors is going to speak directly to the audience and tell them what they want to leave with them for this week's series. When we come back, you don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this message.
Want to know what it's like behind the walls of a women's prison? Get Anala D's latest release, Screaming from the Inside, Incarcerated Women and the Journey to Awakening. Want to study Anala D's roadmap for getting released in 2 years after being sentenced to 20 years served to the door? Obtain her book, How to Prepare a Parole Package and Trigger Your Release from Prison Today.
All righty then. We are back and we are happy to be back. Boy, it's been some powerful messages today, but it's not over yet because I want us to briefly share with our audience a message that you want them to take away from what we talked about today. We're going to start with Brother Lavelle Rosser.
Okay, and I would like to leave people with the thought that it's very important to keep your thoughts very, very high and to continue on with what I said about the number 8 and Moses and the power of the number 8 and the lower self and the higher self. The number 8 can also be a vibration which, if not careful, it can imprison the soul. And so it's important that we aspire, okay, to our higher self, so we are able to release our souls from the imprisonment that the lower aspects of the number 8 is capable of doing.
Oh, that was so powerful, Brother Lavelle Rosser. That was very, very powerful. You know, make sure that you aspire to the higher level so that you can free your soul and won't get stuck down in the root chakra. I like that. You know, I'm not saying exactly like he said it, but that is so spot on. Mark Thomas, what are you going to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I would just get back to Moses and the topic of his meekness. And, you know, Moses was also I mean, he was the leader of all the tribes, so he wasn't meek in that respect. So, but he was meek unto himself. His meekness was within himself. So to me, that's an important part. And it's like Dr. Griffith was saying, is that you need to climb the mountain to get to the crown. Well, there's a fear aspect involved with that. So you can't be meek unto yourself, and which means basically being fearful in some ways. So that's what I want to leave.
That's absolutely right. I like that. You're right. He was, and you know, it's our thoughts. See, we can have thoughts negative to someone else. We don't understand those thoughts are hurting ourselves. Same thing that you just brought out, Mark, is that, you know, you don't want to have that fear into yourself. You're looking strong on the outside. Tamisha talks about this all the time, where we have this look that we're so strong on the outside, but what's really happening on the inside? And with that, let's go to Pastor Archie. What are you gonna share with us?
Well, that as y'all talk about meekness, I would like to leave this here. I always tell people, don't take my meekness for weakness, and it's because you have to, when you're in a power position, you're meek somewhat because you're aware of the power that reside in you, and you know how to use that power, and you don't have to be all belligerent and act all crazy and stuff, you know, because you know that you have the power. That's why people would take you a lot of time to be weak, but it's not weakness because you're meekness all the time. You're meek all the time. And you got to understand, there's only 2 religions. There's only 2 of them. One is righteousness and the other one is wickedness. So you choose which one you want to serve, righteousness or wickedness, because we can learn all the scriptures in the Bible we want to learn. But if we're not able to apply these things to our life and understand what SRC is trying to give to us concerning ourselves and how we are to project ourselves and move up to a higher way of thinking, that's what I would like to leave. Know that you are serving righteousness and not wickedness.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Pastor Archie. And understand that if you are serving wickedness or righteousness, either one of them, remember that it's all about what you're serving to yourself. See, we think that, oh, that person is so wicked to that person, but everything that we do, if we can just remember, people, even, you know, I know that there are some of us who still have people inside the prison walls, but you know what we have to do? We have to send those people, not the ones, I mean, everybody love, but definitely the people that we call the system, send them some love, send love to them. Think upon love for those people, because love is what breaks those gates down. But when we are thinking, oh, you know, we're having wicked thoughts about them, the gates are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm going to tell you something. When you have those wicked thoughts are pointed at yourself and not at the rest of the world. We got to remember that. And now let's go to Tamisha Burgess. So she's gonna see what she wants to leave with our audience.
Yeah, I'm still on the whole fire part and the phoenix, and so I resonate with that only because it's been a personal journey of my own. So for those of you that are listening to this, and we are in this fire phase of our lives, we can, allow the alchemical process. Again, fire can do two things: it can consume and it can refine. So, allow ourselves to allow these conversations to be able to burn away, and consume everything you are not, and be on this journey to refine everything that you are. And these powers that are here, that are present for us, can be activated. We are able to tap into them within ourselves. But gaining emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence is really important when we're talking about not just using, but activating these powers. The problem for a long time has been the misuse and abuse of power. Once we get this knowledge, there are people who haven't gained the emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence to be able to apply these powers in their lives. And so, instead of healing with it, they are harming with it. Instead of turning pain to power, they're turning power into pain. So, the idea of this phoenix rising through the ashes is allowing the ashes to be I really want to say another word, all the stuff that doesn't allow us to ascend and descend and integrate, these infinite parts of God. So
Thank you so much thank you so much for that, Tamisha. You're right. We must embrace and learn. Like a lot of people say, I've gotten a note that says, you're telling people, that throw away their Bibles. We never said throw away your Bible. In fact, we're using the Bible to teach you the hidden truth within the Bible. We're using the Bible to bring from ashes what was burned away, what we're supposed to know. We're using the Bible to teach that information, to teach that message. And with that, I want to turn it over now to Dr. Kedar Griffo, who's going to leave a message with our audience as well. What do you want them to know, Dr. Griffo?
I'll back to what you first stated when we first started the program about the name Moses. And what I wanted to leave everyone is that please start to look at the names of every word that you see in the Bible outside of the regular these and ands and ises and things like that. Study those words and you will be able to see the story from a different perspective. And then it will start to help drive home the messages that we at SRC are trying to give you, which is about the alchemical process, about meditation, about doing away with the lower self and concentrating more on the higher self. Because when you start to study the names, the stories will start to unfold. Just a few quick names, and then I'll back out. Philippians, Philip means lover of horses. That's Sagittarius. Romans, Rome is Aries. Titus, from Titan, from Tito, which means the sun. Timothy means honoring God. And lastly, Corinthians, from Corinth, which means the peak. And so we talked about Aaron's name meaning the peak, Amorite meaning peak, God always living in the peak, in the mountain, and all of the disciples had to go and talk to God, or all of the prophets had to go and talk to God in the mountain. God dwelled in the mountain, which is the peak. So once you start to look at these meanings of these words and not just deal with a regular Bible dictionary, but deal with other sources that will give you more of an in-depth explanation of the words, and then it will help you to start to unravel a lot of the things that were purposely hidden inside of the book to keep you from reaching your potential. And that's all we're trying to do here, is to help you reach our potential while we also strive to reach our own potential. And that's all I want to leave you with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I'd like to also just shout out to our special guests that were here with us today. Our special guest, Carice Moses, our special guest, Saluel, and our special guest all the way from Africa, Victor Visi. I'm so glad that you guys join us today. And if again, if you have anything you want to say, unmute and just do it really quickly, a question or anything like that, do it quickly. If not, we're going to turn it over to our moderator, Mark Thomas, who is going to take us out because we are over time, but you know, it's so good. We have a hard time staying on time.
Okay, thank you, Anala. Another really fascinating show. All of us here with SRC want to thank our audience for sitting in on today's presentation. Our broadcast will be on September 5th, so that'll be 2 weeks from today. So please, at 10 o'clock a.m., join us as we continue revealing the book of Numbers. We really appreciate everyone's patronage and encourage you to email us your questions or comments at shiftingreligiousconcepts@gmail.com. If anyone is interested in advertising with SRC, please contact us at that same email. And don't forget that this presentation will be available on YouTube within the next few days. And so even if you attended today's program, please go to the Shifting Religious Concepts channel and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. This is one of the few ways we get public attention, and it really helps us to promote the SRC mission. If you're not subscribed to our newsletter, go to shiftingreligiousconcepts.com/registration and join us. So that does it for today's broadcast. Once again, watch your email for our Zoom link inviting you to attend our next recording session in 2 weeks on September 5th. And in the meantime, we wish you all peace, health, wisdom, and love, of course.